Demoney5675 asks, how does Ryan Day get rid of his Michigan demons? That's a great question. That's a fantastic question. So Demoney5675 is an Ohio State fan, very passionate, and with Ohio State under Ryan Day being 1-4 against Michigan, and Day having a negative 46-point differential in totality in his most recent 4 losses to the Wolverines. Want to clarify that. It's not counting the one win. That's just negative 46-point differential versus Michigan in the 2020s. Should have added that in there, because now people are going to go in the comments and say, well, actually, it's because they won by 29 points in 2019. Well, actually, it's 17 points, which still negative 17 points as Ohio State's coach with the recent history they've had against Michigan in the 21st century. Not good whatsoever. So that's a good question. Again, Demoney675 or 5675, Ohio State fan, and verbatim his question was, how does Ryan Day get rid of his Michigan demons? How does he? Answer in the comments section down below, and make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and also hit the notification bell too for the Ohio State podcast that's linked in the description. That way you get notified whenever we talk about Ohio State football, because that podcast is essentially a playlist for all of my Ohio State football content, or maybe it's talking about my Big Ten predictions video, which is releasing by the end of the week, that will be included in that podcast. Anything relating to Ohio State will be in that podcast. I think how Ryan Day gets rid of his Michigan demons is, number one, he plays his game. I think that Day, ever since, I don't know exactly how to put it, but I think that he inherited a lot of pressure from Urban Meyer, because Urban Meyer never lost to Michigan, and that was very impressive. At the same time, we also have to acknowledge that Urban Meyer never played a 21, 22, or 23 caliber Michigan team. He just never did. He played now some Brady Hoke Michigan teams. He played some Jim Harbaugh teams that were not as good as the 21 through 23 teams. I think most of the recent Michigan teams in 21, 22, and 23 beat a lot of the Urban Meyer teams, especially the 23 Michigan team, who I think would have beaten any of the Urban Meyer teams. I think they would have beaten all of them. Maybe you disagree. If you do, totally entitled to that opinion. But I think they do. So, number one, it's the fact that he has to change his expectations. And he has to be willing to win or lose the game on his own terms. It feels like, whether 21, but especially 22 and 24, that he was trying to LARP as Urban Meyer. That, he wanted to be this guy and this coach who would be physical. He would run the football. And by be physical, I don't mean be physical in the sense of what physicality actually is, which is toughness. You don't get worn down. You wear down your opponent. Ryan Day clearly thinks that physicality is O-line play, running back play, interior trench play. And those are good things to prioritize. But against Michigan, you saw, especially on offense, and really only on offense, Jim Knowles called a perfect game in that matchup. You saw that he truly thinks that toughness is about running the ball. That's what he thinks toughness is. Straight up. And I don't think, that's mainly a Michigan thing, but you also saw against Texas and against Notre Dame where they ran the football a lot, and especially against Texas, maybe they would have been better off passing it at times. Maybe. I know against Notre Dame, they ran it, and then later in the game, they kind of sputtered out a little bit. So, and almost allowed Notre Dame to come back. Of course, they won the national title, and I think Ryan Day's a good coach, but he does have a Michigan problem. And I think the biggest problem he has is that he expects genuinely that Ohio State should always beat Michigan. That's not reality. You should want to always beat Michigan. You should try your best to always beat Michigan. And if you do, well then, awesome. You have never lost to Michigan. And it should be the same thing with Michigan too. Always want to beat Ohio State. Always try to. Always work hard to get there. but to genuinely think in your mind that you should, and maybe in some cases will, always beat them, always beat your biggest rival, that's completely counterintuitive to the narrative and the correct narrative that this is the greatest rivalry in college football and potentially in sports history. If it is that great, Ohio State will not win every year. Michigan will not win every year. This is why I think eventually Ohio State will beat Michigan again, even though Michigan is completely within their head and takes the game, I would say, almost more personally than Ohio State does, the way that they play. In last year's game, a lot of it was bad Ohio State schematics, but Michigan's O-line did a better job pass blocking. They did a better job run blocking. They did a much better job on their D-line getting to Will Howard than Ohio State's D-line did getting to Davis Warren. They hit harder. They were more solid in coverage. They were smarter in coverage. They committed PI against Jeremiah Smith because they couldn't stop him otherwise, and Ohio State would commit PI against Michigan's wide receivers when the ball on that trick play, for example, is thrown so poorly that you should just turn around and catch the ball. Don't commit PI. It's a lot of these little things, and I think while not all of it is mental, because Michigan finally stepping up and taking the rival personally in a way they hadn't before plays a part, but Ohio State also used to take it personally, and they used to play it in a way that I have never really seen Ryan Day play it that way. I mean, I don't know. In 2019, did Ohio State win that game because they took the rivalry more seriously than Michigan, even in Day's first year with Urban's players? Or was that just because that Ohio State team was so good and talented there was no way they were losing to Michigan for the first time in several years? I don't know. I think that a lot of it is it's him. He's in his own head about it. He compared losing to Michigan to losing his own father, and that's horrible. It's horrible because he doesn't deserve to feel that way. It's bad. And it's also just wrong. And I'm not going to put myself in Ryan Day's shoes because I don't know him. However, I can say that as a Michigan fan who wants to win the game every year, and I imagine that Michigan coaches and past Ohio State coaches, many of them probably would admit that losing a family member is worse than losing at the end of the day what is a game. That's something that has to be fixed. If he forever thinks that losing to Michigan after experiencing it that many times is that emotionally destructive, well, he's going to play it safe every time. And Ohio State's not going to approach that game in the way that they need to probably win, with that edge to them, with not having anything to lose. The only time I've seen that from a Ryan Day team against Michigan was 2023, when they were an underdog, a spread underdog, where you didn't just have anecdotes of people saying, oh, Michigan's going to beat Ohio State. You had Vegas for the first time since 2018, when Ohio State also stepped up and played well above their predicted weight class, Vegas confidently saying the line never moved even when everyone was betting on Ohio State. Vegas saying, yeah, Michigan's going to win, and you can bet as much money as you want. We don't think Ohio State's going to win. And then Ohio State played with that edge. Even with a guy like Kyle McCord, who was rightfully criticized, they played with that edge, and they nearly won. They outgained Michigan in that game on the road and fought valiantly. So that's number one. Long-winded answer, I know, but I think it was needed. That's number one. He has to get out of his own head. Has to. He has to view the game for what it is. A game that's very important, a game that might even get you fired, even if you're successful but don't win it. But at the same time, it's not a life-altering spiritual disaster if you lose. It's not. We saw that last year. I mean, Ohio State lost the game and then won the title. In 2023, they lost the game and didn't have an opportunity to make the title, but they won 11 games. And if they played in the Cotton Bowl with any sense of pride, they would have won 12. Come on. So that's number one. And then number two, I think, is more of a team mentality issue. And this also falls on Ryan Day. But when I look at Ohio State's players and how they've taken the game in previous seasons, it feels like they view Michigan as little brother. Like how Michigan viewed Michigan State under D'Antonio. Like, oh, at some point we're just going to kick your butt. And we're the better program than you. We always have been. We always will be. And we're just going to own you and beat you because we're Ohio State and because you're Michigan. Not because we're better than you on the field. Not because we're going to be better than you this specific Saturday in November, the final Saturday in November. Not because we're going to be better at playing the game and doing what is necessary to win the game than you. We're better than you just because of who we are. That is the lamest mentality one could have, is that because of their immutable characteristics, they are better than you because your immutable characteristics are different. That is not just wrong, and in another world of conversation about that thing, discriminatory. It's just stupid. It's lame. It's beyond lame. Ohio State and Michigan can't control their past. All they can do is control the future, play to their strengths to maximize their chances of winning in the future. And with Ohio State, it feels like they always hearken to what they want the game to be and what they think the game should be based on their past success or their recent history in the game, rather than trying to do whatever it takes to win. Michigan beat Ohio State in 21 by ramming the ball down their throat. They beat them in 22 using explosive plays and looking more like Ohio State on offense than Ohio State did. They won in 23 with defense, interceptions, kicking field goals, and not running the ball down Ohio State's throat, but running it for 3 to 4 yards per carry and chewing clock. Last year, they won it off of mentally breaking the quarterback and mentally breaking the head coach and hanging around and then winning with a field goal with the kicker who's basically automatic from 50. They have won in a variety of different ways over the past 4 years. Ohio State, meanwhile, in 22 and 24, in my mind, tried a lot of the same stuff and mentally on the field looked just as frustrated and just as angry and to a certain degree just as entitled when they weren't crushing Michigan and they melted down and you had the same mental issues. And then in 21, to a certain degree, I don't think Ohio State could have done anything to win that game with how bad the defense was. But at the same time, there were play calls made and there were comments made after the game where it was like, yeah, they expected to win just because they were Ohio State. And that they kind of got shocked when they realized they weren't going to win or that they weren't favored to win and that they really had to make a comeback here. The mentality of Ohio State in relationship to Michigan now is much different than it was under Urban Meyer. The language is the same, whether it's the team up north or, we're going to beat them hard and we're going to earn this for the state of Ohio and all the traditional stuff, all the jargon. That's the same, but the mentality's not the same. I've watched Urban Meyer teams play Michigan teams, and the edge was different. The edge, in fact, was flipped. Michigan thought that they were going to win eventually just because they're Michigan, and Ohio State had like that work ethic where every game they found a way to exploit Michigan's weaknesses, and they would win whether it was an 18 in a shootout, 17 and 16 in defensive battles, in 15 by ramming down their throat, in 14 by surviving, 13 in a shootout and making a stand at the end of the game with a defense that allowed a ton of points, but who stepped up to stop the 2-point conversion in 2012 through an awesome second half lockdown performance. Seriously, how Ryan Day can get rid of his Michigan demons is stop trying to be something you're not. Be yourself, live by the sword, die by the sword. Live by your game plan. Do what you're good at. Throw the ball across the field. If it is necessary for you to win the game by running it 5 times and passing it 40 times, you do that. If it is necessary for you to win the game by running 70 plays and not chewing clock at all and just up-tempoing all the time like your 2022 USC, or maybe that's not the appropriate analogy, but you're high-flying, you're all offense, no defense, do that. Do whatever it takes to win the game. number one. So let go of the ego, the need to live up to a standard of someone who isn't there. And a standard you will never live up to because you lost to Michigan 4 times. You'll never live up to Urban Meyer having that undefeated record. So stop trying to. And then number 2 is correct the locker room mentality. Don't let Denzel Burke in 2023 say he didn't recognize anything special on Michigan's film. Instead, encourage him to say that Michigan's a really good team, but we're going to bring our all, and we're going to beat Michigan, or we're going to die trying. Those things will help Ryan Day get over his Michigan demons and eventually earn him a win over Michigan. Perhaps even a win streak over Michigan, even a winning record over Michigan. I mean, the game is tough, and Michigan had their worst season last year that they've had in quite some time. So it's not going to get easier for Ryan Day from here on out against Michigan. It's not. However, I think he's an elite enough coach with enough talent and enough acumen to where he will eventually beat Michigan again. Even if his mentality doesn't change around Michigan, even if he never gets rid of his Michigan demons, I think he'll beat Michigan again. Just because Ohio State's more talented, he's an elite coach, and at some point, I think they'll come around and win one. If he changes the mentality, then I'm far more confident that eventually he'll beat Michigan and more confident that he'll win maybe a few games in a row against them.